What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors walks onto a daytime talk show, expecting a friendly chat, and instead faces a host determined to tear him down on live television? In just 39 seconds of one single comment, Denise Welch would ignite a confrontation so explosive that it would end with Eugene Levy being escorted off the Loose Women set, but not before delivering a response that left the entire studio in stunned silence. Eugene Levy arrived at the Loose Women studio that morning, the same way he approaches every interview, with humility, warmth, and genuine excitement to connect with the audience. Fresh from promoting his latest project, Eugene had been making the rounds on various talk shows, charming hosts and viewers alike with his trademark wit and down-to-earth personality. The Canadian actor, known for his incredible work in comedy and his ability to make anyone feel comfortable, had no reason to expect this appearance would be any different. He walked onto that stage with a smile, waved to the cheering audience, and took his seat across from the panel of hosts. Denise Welch sat in the center position, flanked by her co-hosts. And from the very first moment Eugene sat down, something felt different. Where other interviewers had greeted him with warmth and genuine interest, Denise's expression was cold, almost dismissive. The audience didn't notice it at first. Neither did Eugene. He simply smiled, adjusted his microphone, and waited for the conversation to begin. The interview started innocently enough. Denise asked Eugene about his latest project, and he launched into an enthusiastic explanation of the work, discussing the creative process, his co-stars, and what made this particular project special to him. He spoke with passion, the way he always does when discussing his craft, gesturing animatedly and smiling as he recalled funny moments from set. The audience was engaged, laughing at his anecdotes, leaning forward in their seats. But Denise wasn't laughing. She sat back in her chair, arms crossed, her expression growing increasingly impatient as Eugene spoke. When he finished his story about a particularly hilarious blooper that had the entire cast in stitches, the audience erupted in laughter. Denise did not join them. Instead, she cut him off mid-chuckle with a sharp, "Right, okay, that's lovely." The dismissive tone was impossible to miss. Eugene's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly, nodding politely as if perhaps he had simply talked too long. He was a guest after all, and he wanted to be respectful of the show's time constraints. Denise shifted in her seat and leaned forward, her eyes narrowing slightly as she looked at Eugene. "So, Eugene," she began, her voice dripping with a tone that made several audience members exchange confused glances. "You've built quite a career playing the same character over and over again, haven't you?" The question landed like a slap. Eugene blinked, clearly taken aback by the sudden shift in tone. The audience went quiet. This wasn't the playful ribbing that often happens in talk show interviews. This was pointed. This was personal. Eugene, ever the professional, managed a slight laugh, trying to diffuse the tension. "Well, I'd like to think I bring something unique to each role," he said carefully, his voice still friendly but noticeably more guarded. "Every character has their own story, their own, but they all have those eyebrows, don't they?" Denise interrupted, smirking as she gestured toward Eugene's face. "I mean, let's be honest. You're basically the eyebrow guy. That's your whole thing." The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them tried to jump in with a redirect. "Eugene, your work in comedy has been so influential." But Denise spoke right over her. No, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Denise continued, waving her hand dismissively at her co-host. "He's made millions playing the same bumbling dad character with funny eyebrows. It's not exactly groundbreaking, is it?" The audience was now completely silent. This had crossed a line from interview to attack, and everyone could feel it. Eugene sat very still, his hands folded in his lap, his expression carefully neutral. Years in the entertainment industry had taught him how to handle difficult situations, but this was something else entirely. This was a host who seemed determined to humiliate him on live television. "Denise," Eugene said slowly, his voice calm but firm, "I think that's a bit reductive. I've been fortunate to work on projects that—" "Reductive?" Denise laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. It was cold, mocking. "Oh, here we go. Big Hollywood star can't handle a little honesty. You Canadians are supposed to be nice, aren't you? Can't take a bit of criticism?" Eugene took a deep breath. The camera zoomed in slightly on his face, capturing the moment of restraint, the visible effort to remain professional in the face of unprovoked hostility. "I'm happy to discuss my work," he said, his voice still measured. "But I'm not sure what I've done to deserve this level of..." "This level of what?" Denise leaned forward, her voice rising. "Honesty, Reality? You come on this show, on British television, and expect us to just fawn all over you like those American talk shows do? We tell it like it is here, Eugene. Maybe you're just not used to real questions. One of the other hosts tried again to intervene. Denise, I think we should. But Denise shot her a look that immediately silenced her. Eugene's jaw tightened. The camera caught it, that small movement that signaled he was reaching the end of his patience. But still, he tried. He tried to salvage this, to be the bigger person. I'm perfectly fine with real questions, he said, his voice still remarkably calm. But what you're doing right now isn't asking questions. You're being deliberately hostile, and I'm honestly confused as to why. Hostile? Denise threw her hands up in mock offense. Oh, I'm hostile now. Ladies and gentlemen, Eugene Levy thinks I'm hostile because I won't kiss his feet. She turned to the audience, many of whom were looking increasingly uncomfortable. This is what happens when celebrities get too used to people telling them how wonderful they are. They can't handle one person being honest. Honest? Eugene repeated, and now his voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by something sharper, more direct. Denise, there's a difference between being honest and being rude. And right now, you're being incredibly rude. The studio went even quieter, if that was possible. This was the moment. This was the shift. Eugene Levy, known for his kindness and professionalism, had just called out a host on her own show. Denise's eyes flashed. She clearly hadn't expected Eugene to push back. Most guests, especially those promoting projects, would simply endure whatever treatment they received, smile through it, and leave. But Eugene wasn't playing that game anymore. Excuse me? Denise's voice went up an octave. You're calling me rude? On my own show? It's not just your show, Eugene replied calmly, gesturing to the other hosts. And yes, I'm calling you rude because that's what you're being. I came here to have a conversation, to talk about my work, to connect with your audience. Instead, you've done nothing but mock me from the moment I sat down. Denise stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't have to sit here and be lectured by some has-been actor who thinks he's too good for British television. The audience gasped, audibly gasped. Several people put their hands over their mouths. One of the other hosts stood up as well, trying to calm the situation, but it was too late. The dam had broken. Eugene slowly rose to his feet. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He was simply done. Has been? He repeated, his voice quiet, but carrying clearly through the silent studio. Is that what you think? That I'm a has-been? Well, when was your last hit? Denise shot back, her face flushed red. When was the last time you did anything that mattered? You're living off decades-old work, and you know it. Eugene shook his head slowly. You know what, Denise? I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I've worked with incredible people. I've been part of projects that have meant something to audiences around the world. I've never claimed to be the biggest star or the most important actor, but I've always treated people with respect, something you clearly know nothing about. How dare you? Denise sputtered, pointing her finger at Eugene. How dare you come onto this show and speak to me like that? How dare I? Eugene's voice rose slightly, the first time he'd raised it during the entire exchange. How dare you invite someone onto your show just to humiliate them? What did I do to you, Denise? Did I offend you somehow before I even walked out here? Because from where I'm standing, you decided before I even sat down that you were going to make this as unpleasant as possible. The other hosts were standing now too, trying to create some kind of buffer between Eugene and Denise, but neither of them was backing down. You think you're so special, Denise continued, her voice venomous. You think because you've been in a few comedies that people care about, you can just waltz in here and demand respect. I'm not demanding anything, Eugene said, his voice dropping back to that calm, measured tone that somehow made his words even more powerful. I'm simply expecting basic human decency, the kind of decency I've shown to every single person I've encountered since I arrived at this studio this morning. The crew, the makeup artists, the other guests, everyone except you has been lovely. So maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't me. Denise's mouth opened and closed. For the first time in the entire confrontation, she seemed at a loss for words, but only for a moment. Get out, she finally said, her voice shaking with rage. Get off my show! Get out of this studio! Eugene didn't move immediately. He stood there, looking at Denise with an expression that was equal parts disappointment and pity. Gladly, he said quietly. Then he turned to the other hosts. I'm sorry you had to witness this. You all seem like lovely people. He turned to the audience. "And I'm sorry to all of you. You came here expecting entertainment, not this." He began to remove his microphone, his movements deliberate and unhurried. Denise was still standing, her chest heaving, her face red. "Security," she called out. "Get him out of here." Two security guards appeared at the edge of the stage, looking extremely uncomfortable with the situation. Eugene held up his hand to them. "It's all right," he said calmly. "I'm leaving." But before he could take a step, Denise had one more thing to say. "You know what your problem is, Eugene?" she called after him, her voice echoing through the studio. "You can't handle a strong woman. That's what this is really about. You're intimidated by me." Eugene stopped. He turned around slowly, and for the first time since the confrontation began, he smiled. Not a warm smile, not a friendly smile. A smile that said he'd heard something so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality, that it didn't even warrant a serious response. "Denise," he said, his voice carrying that same quiet power, "this has nothing to do with you being a woman. This has everything to do with you being cruel. I've worked with strong women my entire career. I've been directed by strong women. I've acted alongside strong women. I've been interviewed by strong women. And not one of them, not a single one, felt the need to tear me down to prove how strong they were. Strength doesn't require cruelty. Confidence doesn't require humiliation. You're not being strong right now. You're being a bully." The words hung in the air. The entire studio was frozen. Even Denise seemed momentarily stunned into silence. The other hosts stood with their mouths slightly open. The audience was completely still, barely breathing. Eugene continued. "And the saddest part is, I bet if you just had a normal conversation with me, we could have had a great interview. I bet your audience would have enjoyed it. I bet you might have even enjoyed it. But instead, you chose this. You chose to be hostile from the moment I sat down, and now you're trying to make it about gender, when really, it's just about basic human kindness." He turned back toward the exit, but Denise wasn't finished. "You don't get to come on here and lecture me," she shouted, her voice cracking slightly. "You don't get to tell me how to do my job." Eugene paused at the edge of the stage. He didn't turn around this time. He simply said, over his shoulder, "I'm not telling you how to do your job, Denise. I'm telling you how to be a decent person. There's a difference." And with that, Eugene Levy walked off the Loose Women stage. The security guards followed at a respectful distance, but they weren't escorting him. They were simply walking with him. Eugene moved with dignity, his head held high, his pace steady and unhurried. Behind him, Denise stood alone at the center of the stage. The other hosts had backed away slightly, creating physical distance that reflected the emotional distance. The audience was still silent. No one was applauding. No one was cheering. They were all simply watching, trying to process what had just happened. One of the producers rushed onto the stage, whispering urgently to Denise, but she waved them away. She looked out at the audience, opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. For perhaps the first time in her career, she had no comeback, no witty retort, no way to spin what had just happened. Because what had just happened was clear to everyone in that studio and everyone watching at home. A kind, decent man had been attacked for no reason, had tried repeatedly to de-escalate, and had finally stood up for himself with a calm, measured response that made his attacker look exactly like what she was, a bully who had picked the wrong target. The camera captured one final image before cutting to commercial. Denise Welch standing alone on the stage, her co-host having quietly moved away, the audience silent and uncomfortable. The empty chair where Eugene had been sitting serving as a stark reminder of what happens when cruelty meets dignity, and dignity refuses to back down. In the wings, Eugene was surrounded by crew members, many of whom were apologizing profusely for what had happened. Eugene, true to form, was gracious to every single one of them. "It's not your fault," he kept saying, shaking hands, accepting the hugs that several of them offered. "You all were wonderful. Thank you for your kindness." His publicist rushed over, phone already to her ear, no doubt preparing to do damage control, but Eugene gently touched her arm. "It's fine," he said quietly. "Let it speak for itself." And it did. Because sometimes, the most powerful response to cruelty isn't a devastating comeback or a clever retort. Sometimes, it's simply refusing to participate in the cruelty, calling it out with calm honesty, and walking away with your dignity intact. Eugene Levy had spent over 40 years building a reputation as one of the kindest, most professional actors in the industry. In 39 seconds of one comment, Denise Welch had tried to tear that down. But all she'd succeeded in doing was proving exactly why Eugene's reputation was deserved and why hers, in that moment, was in tatters. The confrontation on the Loose Women stage that day wasn't just about one host and one guest. It was about the difference between someone who uses their platform to build people up and someone who uses it to tear people down. It was about the difference between confidence and insecurity, between strength and bullying, between entertainment and cruelty. And in the end, it was about a good man who tried his best to be kind, who was attacked despite that kindness, and who finally said enough. Not with anger, not with vengeance, but with simple, honest truth that cut through all the noise and left no room for misinterpretation. The moment Eugene Levy walked off that stage, he left behind more than just an uncomfortable host and a silent audience. He left behind a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in the face of cruelty is refuse to engage with it on its own terms. To simply state the truth, maintain your dignity, and walk away. Because at the end of the day, Eugene Levy knew something that Denise Welch seemed to have forgotten. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. And it's not earned by tearing others down. It's earned by how you treat people, especially when you have the power and they don't. It's earned by kindness, by professionalism, by decency. As Eugene left the studio that day, he carried with him the respect of everyone who witnessed what happened. The crew who saw how he treated them with kindness, even in the midst of conflict. The audience who watched him try repeatedly to de-escalate before finally standing his ground. The other host who recognized that they had just witnessed someone being attacked for no reason and responding with grace under pressure. What Denise Welch intended as a takedown, an opportunity to assert her dominance and show how she could handle a Hollywood actor, became instead a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview and how not to treat another human being. Her attempt to make Eugene look small made him look bigger. Her attempt to embarrass him embarrassed only herself. Her attempt to prove her strength revealed her weakness. The interview that was supposed to last 20 minutes lasted barely 10 before it fell apart completely. 10 minutes that started with a hopeful actor ready to share stories and connect with an audience, and ended with that same actor calmly walking off set after being subjected to unprovoked hostility. 10 minutes that showed the difference between someone who has earned their place in the industry through talent and kindness and someone who mistakes cruelty for strength. 10 minutes that reminded everyone watching that true class isn't about never getting angry or never standing up for yourself. True class is knowing when to walk away, how to call out bad behavior without stooping to it, and maintaining your integrity even when someone is actively trying to strip it from you. Eugene Levy walked onto the Loose Women stage that day as a respected actor. He walked off as something more, a reminder that kindness and strength aren't opposites, that you can be gentle and still have boundaries, that you can be professional and still call out inappropriate behavior, that you can be the bigger person without being a doormat. And Denise Welch was left standing alone on that stage, the architect of her own disaster, having learned the hard way that not everyone will simply endure mistreatment in silence. That, eventually, even the kindest person will reach their limit. And that when they do, when someone like Eugene Levy finally says enough, the truth of the situation becomes impossible to deny. The empty chair remained on the stage for several long seconds after Eugene left, a physical representation of what happens when you mistake cruelty for entertainment, when you forget that the person across from you is a human being deserving of respect, when you let your own insecurities and need for dominance override basic decency. In those 39 seconds, from the moment Denise made that first cutting remark to the moment the confrontation truly ignited, she set in motion a chain of events that would define that interview, that moment, that day. And while she may have thought she was establishing dominance, asserting power, showing strength, what she actually did was reveal the truth about both herself and Eugene Levy. She revealed that beneath the confident exterior was someone who felt the need to tear others down. He revealed that beneath the humble, funny exterior was someone with a backbone of steel who would not be pushed beyond a certain point. She revealed that she saw interviews as battles to be won. He revealed that he saw them as conversations to be shared. She revealed cruelty. He revealed character. And the audience, both in the studio and watching at home, saw it all unfold in real time. They saw the attack. They saw the restraint. They saw the attempted de-escalation. They saw the final stand. And they saw one person walk away with their dignity intact, while another remained behind, diminished by her own actions.